The statue of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee was gifted to the United States Capitol as part of the National Statuary Hall collection by the Commonwealth of Virginia in 1909. On December 21, 2020, the statue was removed from the grounds of the United States Capitol to be replaced with a civil rights activist, Barbara Rose Johns. Who was Barbara Rose Johns? She was born in 1935 in New York City to Violet and Robert Johns. She moved to Prince Edward County, Virginia during World War II to live on a farm with her maternal grandmother. In this county, blacks and whites had separate but unequal schools. As a 15-year-old teenager, she became more and more frustrated with the all-black Robert Russell Moulton High School in Farmville, Virginia, which had inadequacies such as poor facilities, shabby equipment, no science labs, no gymnasium, and no cafeteria. Even worse than all of that, the school had such poor plumbing that the toilets barely worked. It was a school built to hold 180 students, but was being used for 400. To add insult to injury, the county built several freestanding buildings of plywood and tar paper to try and accommodate the overflow. These tar paper buildings were described as chicken shacks or chicken coops. On rainy days, the students had to use umbrellas to keep from getting the papers and themselves wet. This school was in sharp contrast to the nearby all-white Farmville High School. This school had spacious classrooms, modern heating, a real cafeteria, and an awesome auditorium. When Barbara complained to her favorite teacher, Miss Davenport, about the conditions, the teacher responded, "Why don't you do something about it?" Barbara was described as quiet, inward, intelligent, and mature, so she was surprised at her teacher's answer. She gave it some thought and moved forward. In her words, and I quote, "The plan I felt was divinely inspired because I hadn't been able to think of anything until then. The plan was to assemble together the student council members. From this, we would formulate plans to go on strike. We would make signs and I would give a speech stating our dissatisfaction, and we would march out of the school, and people would hear us and understand our difficulties and would sympathize with our plight and would grant us our new school building, and our teachers would be proud and the students would learn more, and it would be grand." Close quote. So, on April 23, 1951, Barbara Johns, a 16-year-old high school girl in Prince Edward County, Virginia, took a stand against the unequal treatment of African American and white students in the county. She bravely delivered an impassioned speech urging her classmates to join her in a strike against the school system, to force them to make changes to the substandard conditions at Moulton High School. Following her, the Moulton students left the school in protest of overcrowding. This walkout was one of the first of its kind. Barbara's determination led to a federal court case, Davis versus County School Board of Prince Edward County. In 1954, this case became one of 5 cases that the U.S. Supreme Court reviewed in Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, when it declared school segregation unconstitutional. Prince Edward County continued to fight desegregation for years following John's protest and the Brown versus Board. White Virginians launched a massive resistance. The Board of Supervisors refused to appropriate any funds for the Prince Edward School Board from 1959 through 1964. They chose to close the schools rather than integrate them. The schools were closed for 5 years. Following the strike, Barbara was sent to live with her uncle Vernon Johns in Montgomery, Alabama, to finish her schooling because of threats made against her life. Barbara's family faced hardships because of her tenacity as well. After graduation from high school, Barbara attended Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, ultimately graduated from Drexel University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She went on to lead a quiet life. She married Reverend William Powell, had 5 children, and was the librarian in the Philadelphia Public Schools. Barbara Johns Powell died in 1991. Barbara Rose Johns Powell made her mark at a time when it was not easy. She certainly made a difference and deserves her place in the U.S. Capitol Statuary Hall. There's a book by Terry Canfield, The Girl from the Tar Paper School, if you would like to read more about her. Thank you.